Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into an absolute pivot point in human history. But, we're going to tackle it from a completely different angle. We're not just looking at the kings, or the sultans, or the grand armies. Instead, we're focusing on the people caught right in the middle of the crossfire. We're talking about a high-stakes, geopolitical tightrope walk that literally redrew the map of the world. It's this insane story of commerce colliding with survival. So let's just get right into it. So put yourself in this scenario. It's April 1453. You're standing on top of these massive, crumbling, triple-layered walls in Constantinople. You look out over the horizon, and the landscape is just entirely swallowed up by tens of thousands of Ottoman soldiers. Now, for over 1,000 years, these exact walls were the ultimate insurance policy for the Roman world. But this time, man, things are different. The literal air around you is vibrating. It's shaking from the blasts of the largest cannons ever built up to that point in history. The Roman Empire is down to this single, isolated outpost, facing an absolute reckoning. Okay, let's dive into this. Right at the swirling center of all this chaos is what we're calling the Genoese dilemma. Because while history usually points the camera at the sultan outside the walls or the emperor trapped inside, there's actually a third party stuck in a completely impossible situation, the Genoese of Galata. Talk about a rock and a hard place, right? This was a wildly high-stakes tightrope walk. You have a single merchant colony agonizing over whether to prioritize their faith, their profits, or just bare-bones survival. They were the ultimate middlemen, totally boxed in. To really wrap our heads around why this was such a monumental deal, we need to look at the geopolitical chessboard in 1453. By this point, the Byzantine Empire, it wasn't really an empire anymore. It was basically a skeletal city-state holding on by a thread, and surrounding that fragile little remnant was an absolute juggernaut, the rising Ottoman superpower. That 1,000-year-old Roman insurance policy we talked about was completely running out of time. Sultan Mehmed II wasn't just marching out for some casual border skirmish. He was there on a mission to end an entire era. Now, sitting right in the shadow of this impending doom, just across a narrow strip of water called the Golden Horde, was Galata. This was a super thriving trade hub run by the Republic of Genoa. These guys were the masters of the sea. They completely controlled this incredibly lucrative flow of goods running from the Black Sea straight down into the Mediterranean. They had an incredibly sweet deal going on with the Byzantines, essentially acting as the economic engine for the whole area. They're kind of a relatable business anchor here. But being the master merchants they were, they could read the room. They saw the writing on the wall with the Ottomans knocking at the door. Now, what's really interesting is how this crisis just fractured the community. The Genoese were split right down the middle. On the one hand, you've got the official government in Galata desperately clinging to this idea of official neutrality. I mean, they are literally writing these polite, diplomatic letters to the Sultan, promising, hey, we won't help the Romans, all because they're terrified of losing their warehouses and trade contracts. But then, on the exact opposite side, you have these soldiers of fortune who absolutely refuse to just sit around. The most famous was Giovanni Giustiniani, this legendary figure who rolls up to the fight with 700 heavily armed Genoese volunteers. So why did Giustiniani and his guys even show up? I can tell you right now, it was definitely not for the paycheck. Giustiniani saw the massive grand strategy implications of what was going down. He knew that if the Second Rome, if Constantinople fell to a rival power, the entire global balance of power was going to shift and shift permanently. He and his volunteers understood this wasn't just a rescue mission for one city. It was about defending a whole geopolitical order. They couldn't just bunker down in their warehouses and watch history burn. They had to get in the fight. And man, this dilemma escalates into a totally cinematic, tactical nightmare. See, while the official Genoese colony is playing the we're neutral card, they're actually secretly helping the Romans. Step one, they pull this massive iron chain right across the Golden Horde harbor to block the Ottoman fleet. And honestly, it works beautifully. Well, for a little while anyway. Because then, Sultan Mehmed executes an absolute genius bypass maneuver. Step two, he literally has his entire fleet dragged overland on grease logs to completely bypass the chain, dropping his ships right into the harbor, directly behind the Genoese colony. Which brings us to step three. Suddenly, the Genoese realize all those massive bronze cannons are now pointing right at them. So here we are, at the ultimate moment of crisis. The Genoese in Galata are quite literally staring down the barrel of a massive bronze cannon. The Ottoman ships are in their backyard. That protective chain, totally useless now. The illusion that they were safe is just shattered, and they have to make a split-second, real-time decision. Do they go all in, fully commit to defending Constantinople alongside Giustiniani and risk absolutely everything? Or do they pull back, double down on their neutrality, and try to cut a deal with the new masters of the East? I mean, talk about the most terrifying business decision you could possibly make. Well, as history tells us, those ancient walls eventually gave way. The Second Rome fell. And this moment instantly became one of the most pivotal pivot points in human history. For the Genoese, trying to play both sides and stay neutral, it was a total disaster. That official neutrality basically ruined their massive trade empire, and they never truly recovered their dominance in the region. By trying to protect their bottom line without taking a real stand, they lost all their leverage. And zooming out, the fall of Constantinople, which had been the seat of Orthodox Christianity for centuries, it ripped open a massive, glaring power vacuum on the world stage. And this is where we see the massive macro ripple effect of this one localized siege. Think about the collapse side of the equation. The fall of the Second Rome and the destruction of that Orthodox Christian seat in 1453 leaves an incredibly dangerous geopolitical void. But, nature abhors a vacuum. Look at the inheritance that comes out of this. Way up north, the Grand Princes of Moscow had been watching closely. With Constantinople gone, Ivan III steps up, claims the mantle of the Orthodox faith, and actually declares Moscow the Third Rome. He uses this immense cultural shift to forge the first unified Russian state, casting off the Tatar yoke. It's wild. The literal ashes of one empire directly birthed another. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today, and I want to leave you with something to really chew on. We've talked about the grand strategy, the terrifying tactical nightmares, and the monumental fallout. But just put yourself in those shoes for a second. If you were a Genoese merchant standing in Galata in April 1453, feeling those massive cannons shaking the earth, what would you have actually done? Would you have grabbed a sword and stood on those crumbling walls with Giustiniani to fight for the balance of the world? Or would you have drafted a polite letter to the Sultan, praying you could save your business and ride out the storm? It is just a fascinating intersection of commerce, faith, and strategy. Thanks so much for exploring this incredible piece of history with me today. And hey, keep asking those tough questions.